Nepal into China when the destructive wall of water, glacier ice, and debris hit the area. I spoke with their daughter and son, Radhika and Akash Sharma, just before air. Dr. Sharma, thank you so much for speaking with us. I know your brother Akash is there for support, and I'm glad you guys are together. I'm so sorry for what your family is going through right now. When was the last time you had contact with your parents? Have you had any word about them?
First of all, we really appreciate you sitting down and talking with us because we want to get the word out, and we ultimately want them to be brought home. The last time we heard from them was Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. They were at the border, and we believe that it was confirmed that they had crossed the border to the Tibet side. And this was about an hour before the floods occurred in that area.
And you've heard that is that through the tour agency that they were with?
Yes, so we've heard that through the tour agency manager. He's based in Kathmandu, and he had really close contact with the 3 tour guides that were with my parents and their group. But after that period, they have not been able to contact them at all.
And I know you're hopeful that they crossed over to the Tibet side. Is that because it seems like the damage was more on the Nepalese side?
Well, we're hoping because I think one of the last things that was told to the tour agency manager was that they had successfully crossed the border. Other than that, I don't know. I know the Nepalese side, unfortunately, has bared the worst part of the destruction. I don't know. We really hope that they made it through to the Tibet side.
And I know obviously you are desperate for information from government officials, rescue workers, anyone with contacts at hospitals in the region, anyone who may have been in a different tour group and seen anything. Have you been able to contact other people whose loved ones are on the tour as well to kind of compare notes?
Yeah, so last night I posted my parents' information and their pictures on social media in the hopes that I could just get the word out. And if somebody saw them on ground, they would be able to reach out to me. I haven't been able to locate them, but what I have received is just a community, a huge community of people who, in the United States, they're just like my brother and I. They're children, family members of aunts and uncles, parents who are on this pilgrimage and who they've lost contact with. I've made a WhatsApp group. We're trying to slowly get more of the people, especially in the United States, into that group so that if we get information from the community on the ground, we can share it with each other. It just makes the whole process a little bit more bearable, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
And I understand you and your brother are intent to head to Nepal tomorrow. Do you have a sense of what you'll do when you get there? Obviously, this is a situation nobody can prepare for.
Yes, so we are going to try our best and just get more information. I feel like if we can just get any more information, talk to more people in Nepal, we can maybe just get a better sense of things. My plan is to first go to the embassies, talk to them, and then from there, maybe go to the different hospitals, try to figure out which hospitals have had or treating patients that are rescued from that area, try to see if I can find my parents, and then try to talk to, anyone who will talk to me, like the police, the Red Cross, anyone I can get information from, really. Because I know that information is going to be really valuable, especially getting it right there, in real time from the ground. So, yeah.
Can you tell us about your parents? What was This was a religious pilgrimage.
Yeah. So my parents they live in New York City. They're U.S. citizens. They've lived there for the last 30 years. We're both born and raised in New York City. They're really hardworking, down-to-earth people. They put both of us through college. They put me through medical school. They just retired a year ago, and finally, after all the work that they put in with us, and we kind of pushed them to go live your life, go travel, and they are pretty religious, and so they had been exploring and researching this religious pilgrimage to Mount Kailash, which is really special to a lot of Hindus. It's the home of Lord Shiva. So one of their friends who's actually in the group with them, who's lost as well, she had done this tour many times, and so they were going with her and the tour group that she trusted. We just didn't realize that this was going to happen and our world was going to turn upside down.
Well, Radhika and Akash, I wish you the best, and I hope you get information soon and quickly, and I hope somebody sees this and has some information, and I'm sure I'll be praying for you and a lot of people as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if our parents are watching, somehow we love you and we want you to come home, and we hope to bring you home, and we know that you're worried about us, probably more than you're worried about yourself, because that's just the type of people that they are. But we really miss you. We really love you. So I hope that we can find you soon. Thank you.
Much more ahead tonight. Next, best-selling author John Krakauer, who has written extensively about the region, about the influx of tourists and commercialism has more predated the impact natural disasters than climate change have had. Later, more on the role climate change may have played in the disaster and the possible trouble yet to come.
Oh my God, Mario.
Well, the death toll in Nepal now at least 389 people and expected to climb. The water in a barrier lake formed by the glacier's collapse, landslide that is believed to have touched this all off, now stands at an estimated 528 million gallons and climbing, all of which could break through the mud and rocks holding it back right now and cause yet more flooding and destruction. Chinese authorities say there is a high risk of it happening. Joining us now is journalist and author John Krakauer, whose book Into Thin Air was a remarkable account of a natural and human disaster in the Himalayas and the climb of Mount Everest. John, thanks for being with us. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. When you, first of all, you see these images, you know this region, what goes through your mind?
It's horrifying. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying to see the scale and the speed. This was a remarkable event, and does not go well for not only finding survivors, but for rebuilding this area in the future. It wiped out the Friendship Bridge, which got wiped out a year ago in a much smaller flood. But this area is only one of two, important ways to get into China from Nepal to get into Tibet. And the fact that it's going to take a long time to rebuild the roads, I mean, more than 20 miles of roads were wiped out. So this is going to have a lasting impact. The immediate aftermath is horrifying. We're trying to rescue people. The long-term effects for people who work in Nepal and know what lies ahead are really discouraging. What it's going to take to come back.
You've written extensively about the climb up Mount Everest and how that's changed in the 30 years since you climbed it. How specifically has Nepal as a whole changed in that time?
Not for the better. It's more corrupt. It has greater problems. The government has failed over and over again, from Maoists. And last year there was another election, very optimistic. Young people, Gen Z, they called themselves, elected a young, promising engineer rapper who promised reform, and it looks like this is going to be another failed government. He is not living up to the expectations. So, I mean, there's so many problems in this country, and the government is so dysfunctional. Nepalis have a spirit. They have this saying, "Que garne." It's sort of, whatever, we deal with it. And it's too bad that they have to have that, but they've got it at least, so they'll keep trying. But this is bad. This reminds me of the 2015 earthquake that killed about 9,000 people and left 600,000 people homeless. I hope not, it'll be those kind of numbers, but looking at these videos just makes me sick to my stomach.
Is there anything people could have done to prepare for something like this?
Well,
yeah,
we're going to see 30 years ago, they could have taken. Yeah, they could take climate change seriously. The climate is warming faster in the Himalaya than other places, but it's warming a lot of places faster than was thought. And the business of Mount Everest of climbing Mount Everest, which is a huge business in Nepal. 1,000 people more or less climbed Everest last year. It's a multi-million-dollar industry, and it is now threatened because the carapace of ice, the ice and snow that covers the Mount Everest massif, is melting. It's melting alarmingly fast, and it's making the most dangerous part of the climb from the Nepal side really dangerous. The Khumbu icefall is now disintegrating, and last year it was closed for a long period of time because huge towers of ice were in danger of collapsing. That's only going to get worse, and there's serious talk now of having to close that icefall altogether and find another route up the Nepal side of the mountain, which would be difficult. So, yeah, it's climate change is bad for everybody. And the Chinese side of the mountain is closed now. It'll be closed next summer. China is really mercurial. You never know. You can't count on these to climb Everest from that side. And climbing at moments like this it's so unimportant. This is so much more important than whether climbers can climb Mount Everest or not. That's just falls by the wayside.
Well, John, I appreciate you joining us. And if folks would like to contribute to disaster relief in Nepal through the American Himalayan Foundation, which John is involved with, go to himalayan-foundation.org/donate/crisis-response. It's up there on the screen. Up next, to John's point, more on the earth science behind this disaster and insight on the biggest challenges ahead.
Have I got news for you? New season premiere September 12th on CNN.
Well, the glacier collapse that's believed to have caused in part this immense destruction, this wall of rock, ice, and water you're seeing on your screen, was so large that it was originally thought to be seismic activity. The impact registered with the equivalent of a 5.2 magnitude earthquake. Scientists tell CNN that although it's too early to tell what role climate change may have played in this particular glacier's collapse, the Himalayas are part of a rapidly warming region, as John Krakauer just talked about, which is home to thousands of glaciers. Joining me now is Ben Ayers. He's a journalist without glaciers. Joining me now is Ben Ayers. He's a journalist with Outside Magazine who's been based in Nepal for more than 20 years. He's co-host of the Everest Live podcast. Austin Lord, who is senior fellow at Simpson Center. His research focuses on disaster and climate risk management. And Alton Byers, who's a faculty research scientist at the Institute of Arctic and Alpine Research at the University of Colorado at Berkeley. Austin, you know the area that's been devastated. What goes through your mind? What happened here?
So this is a horrifying event, as many of the speakers have already indicated. For me, I've spent a lot of time in this particular region over the last 12 years. So seeing the images, what goes through my mind is layered, to be honest. A variety of professional orientations to understanding the cascading hazard impacts, but also the global impacts. It's terrifying, and I know a lot of people have been impacted. But what happened here, as you know, and I think we discussed a bit in previous conversations, is a large-scale glacial collapse on the north side of the Longtang Range, then fell down and impounded or blocked the river, the Lende Kola, and then that created a dam and backed up over a period of time that then burst out in a rapid outburst flood, a lake outburst flood of that dam that then swept down and impacted the Chinese border and a variety of settlements below in Rasua district, where I've spent, again, a lot of time The process is a different variation of a cascading hazard chain. We've had several events in the last few years across the Himalayan region that have had different combinations or different interactions between hazards in sequence in high elevation regions. The mountain cryosphere or the frozen world, things are destabilizing quickly, and there's all kinds of slope failures and detachments that can then trigger these long run-out stream flow events. What you're seeing on the screen is the deposit at the bottom of this, the first phase of this event, where this glacial detachment led to an avalanche or a landslide that blocked the river entirely. And here you're seeing the deposit that remains there in the river and a small lake that's formed in the river and the deposit itself.
And Alton, I understand you're set to go to a different part of Nepal next month to try to help develop plans for community preparedness and glacier hazard management. What would it have taken, if anything, to have seen something like this coming? Is that possible?
I don't think it's possible to predict or see something like this coming. There's no sort of early warning system that we know of. Now, you can identify areas that are high risk through remote sensing that have overhanging ice and would be at risk of a similar event. But it's unlike a glacial lake, which is there and you can see it and you can put an early warning system in. These are almost impossible to predict.
Ben, you said this isn't a once every 100-year event, it's more like a once every 1,000 years. Do you think there'll be more of these given the impact of climate change? It's particularly in the Himalayas?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that whole adage of like a 100-year flood isn't to say it's predictable once every 100 years. It means that that's about the likelihood given traditional modeling. But as we see the climate warm, you know, the effects of climate change are going to impact places like Nepal, places in the Himalaya that have newer, more fragile ecosystems or more fragile geographies, much, you know, exponentially more than they will in a place, you know, like North America. So what we're seeing is what, you know, this 1,000-year event may well be a decade event. Like we're kind of on the frontier here of the way that climate is going to impact the cryosphere and the way that, you know, these sensitive, you know, ever-changing geographical areas are going to react to a warming climate. So I think that, you know, these kind of events are probably something we will see much more of in our lifetime. And as Austin mentioned, this isn't the first time that this has happened. Last year, in this very same river, in this very same area, there was another massive flooding event that killed 18 people. This is something that's become very regular in the fall, unfortunately, and in the surrounding areas.
And Austin, do you agree with that? And how concerning is this other mass in the water that Chinese authorities and others are watching?
Yeah, I agree with that. Basic idea is that climate risks are evolving faster than we can keep up with them. There's been a number of events in just the last 5 years alone, extreme flow events similar to this with different cascading hazard chains that have proven that we often don't know where to look. As Alton said, if you know where to look, it's much easier to implement a monitoring process and build something that can generate an early warning perhaps. But here, a dozen of the last 15 events have come from places that sort of blindsided us. So climate risks are evolving faster and overwhelming our existing plans and introducing new levels of uncertainty beyond which we haven't seen before. So we're learning from every single event. To the second part of your question about this, about the current state of these lakes, the lakes that are formed in the flow path of the initial event, of the main event, have been changing and been growing in dimensions over the last 24 hours. They are much smaller, I should say. There's one on the river itself that we saw, and there's one further up, just below the fracture in the glacier that was formed. They're between each of them is about a tenth of a square kilometer. They're growing in volume, but they're not significant they're not insignificant, but they're not to the extent if they failed that they could trigger an event on the scale that we saw. It's more likely that they would trigger a smaller flood event that would go in the same flow path and that would have much more limited effects. There is a concern for those who are doing search and rescue, for example, and operating in the river corridor itself, trying to recover materials from that corridor. But this is now being monitored much more closely. The challenge with these lakes is tracking them in the coming days. If their weather system arrives and if it comes to the area and the lakes, the volume behind the lakes, which is difficult to estimate, continues to grow, they could release water, but that water could be released slowly as well as suddenly. So it's not this morning there was a lot of media coverage and saying it could be bigger than the last one. I think it's fair to say that it would be a more limited flow. Even though it could be a cascading hazard chain, it would be a smaller one.
Well, that's a little bit of good news right there. Alton, I understand there were kind of warning, some sort of warnings, I don't know if it's sirens or signals for flooding, but that they're not prepared for something like this, for a sort of massive breach all at once. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things really not being discussed is that you have to realize that if this event happened, if we had this massive detachment of glacial ice and rock, which I think is connected with the degradation of permafrost, even at the highest altitude, that's becoming unstable, and that's becoming part of the triggering process. But if we had this event that turned into a flood, okay, a hyper-concentrated slurry or whatever you call it, this would have been called a glacier event, a glacier flood event. When it destroys villages and cities and kills people downstream, it becomes a catastrophic event. One of the reasons it's a catastrophic event is because of all of that building down in floodplains. Now, Nepal in the last 20 years has undergone massive urbanization, building in areas that are historically prone to flooding. And that's why we're getting these massive catastrophic events. So if you look at photographs taken 50 years ago, villages were up higher.
Yeah. And also, I know that's something you are actually working with in communities and warning them about building in areas that have flooded in the past. Alton Byers, appreciate it, and we should continue this conversation in the coming days. Ben Ayers, also forward as well. Thank you. Coming up more on our coverage out of Nepal and severe conditions search and rescue crews are facing amid what we know so far.
At Farmers, honesty is